What happens when you give a platform to 12 million people, all of whom collectively share one single brain cell? Nothing positive, right? Well now, suppose you give this group lots of money, tons of media coverage, and a vendetta against the entire US financial system. The outcome obviously isn't going to be pretty. Well, something similar has been happening since the early days of 2021 on Reddit. For those of you who don't know, Reddit is a social media site where you can join or create groups centered around almost any topic. Interested in Pokemon? Well, there are a whole bunch of different subreddits dedicated to that and any other desire you might have. These groups, they're called subreddits, and this story is about one infamous subreddit called Wall Street Bets. Now these guys call themselves degenerates, but I'm sure if I called them animals they wouldn't mind at all. So what binds these 12 million people together, and what is their story? Well, GameStop, I'm sure, needs no introduction, but still, here it goes. It's a company that was set up in Dallas and Texas in 1984. Its stores brought video games to every town in America. They were all the rage in the pre-internet era of gaming, and for good reason. You get retail-priced video games available in a store close to home. Now, GameStop's business model worked well before the era of the internet, but after the internet became accessible and games became downloadable, GameStop's business started to go downhill. The worst thing, GameStop was one of those companies which they thought were too big to ever face an existential crisis, and so they never bothered to change. The same brick and mortar foundations that worked in the 90s just weren't going to work in 2013 when people wanted accessibility and ease of use. These days, it's working even less well. And so the business of GameStop started to decline. Now the apes over at Wall Street Bets, they didn't like this. They had fond memories as children of combing through the shelves at their local GameStop, picking out the early Call of Duties, and throughout the COVID pandemic and the lockdowns in particular, they saw this business start to die. At the same time, they saw a concerted effort by some of the wealthiest, most powerful institutions in the world to bring this business to its knees. These hedge funds, and in particular, one called Melvin Capital, sought to short this business. Now this is where everything gets just a little bit technical. So what is shorting? Well, shorting a stock is the process of borrowing a stock, selling it at market price, but in doing so, you create selling pressure and so cause the stock to fall in price. After the stock falls, you simply buy the stock back from the public at a cheaper rate and you pocket the difference. So let's say a company hasn't been doing too well for some time. Their stock is priced at $20, but the market is rough, so you skedaddle on in there, borrow some stocks while they're worth $20 a piece, sell them to others for market price, and just wait. The market does its thing and the company depreciates in value. Now each stock is worth $10, so you agree to go back out there and buy the shares you sold for $20 for $10. Then you return these borrowed stocks to the original owner and enjoy your $10 of profit for every borrowed share. Institutions like Melvin Capital did this on a monumental scale, and they drove the value of GameStop into the ground. But what if the company recovers? What if it thrives and grows and expands? Well, as its share price rises, these short sellers find themselves in a little bit of a pickle. The shares they loaned and sold at $20 a piece are now worth $30. So to exit their position and pay back their loan, they find themselves eating a loss of $10 per share instead of a profit. To make matters worse, as they buy back shares on the open market to pay off their obligations, they increase buying pressure and force the price up even further. If this happens on a large enough scale, you end up with a short squeeze that can destroy the short sellers instead of their target. So what exactly did Wall Street Bets actually do? Well, they instituted a short squeeze. They turned the table around and put their hedge funds on the defensive. Now, Reddit is widely known for its anti-big corporation views, video game obsession, and feeling nostalgic for everything from stocks to anime. And the GameStop short attack checked all three of those boxes. It had corporate greed with a controversial method like shorting. It targeted a beloved old franchise like GameStop, and GameStop itself invokes childhood memories of nostalgia. Wall Street Bets took it upon themselves to save GameStop from their collapse. This whole story had a massive underdog theme, with GameStop fighting for its survival, and who doesn't love a good underdog story? Now, one of the many ways to keep a business afloat is by injecting it with cash, and GameStop was certainly in trouble. The problem was they had neither good management ready to improve things nor enough cash to delay the sinking of the ship, and so big businesses and hedge funds across America chose GameStop as the victim of a short attack. The shorting process was already underway and it was not looking good. GameStop stock used to be valued at around $40 near the end of 2007, and it was a pitiful $4 for most of 2020. Clearly, GameStop was not in a good position to survive for very long. Redditors, though, had other plans. Once they realized that GameStop was being viciously shorted, they took it upon themselves to save it. GameStop's only chance of survival, though, laid upon the possibility of raising cash, but as a company in mortal peril, releasing new shares or acquiring some debt made that a very unlikely possibility. Our contrarian investors found a way to help, though. They bought tons of GameStop stock, thus increasing its share price and allowing the company to raise enough capital to survive. Hundreds of thousands of people threw millions of their own dollars behind this company with seemingly no regard as to whether or not it was actually a good investment. Why did they do it then? Well, at first it was really just a well-placed joke, but it turned into a short squeeze and then it changed everything. GameStop's share price quite literally exploded. The stock was worth $4 each in August, but in January it peaked at over $400, a literal 100 times increase in its value. The trigger was, of course, Wall Street bets. This monumental increase in GameStop's value allowed them to raise enough capital to stave off bankruptcy and even put in a rescue plan and bring the company forward in the future. Hedge funds like Melvin Capital found themselves underwater and incapable of paying off their debts, and even if they tried to, they would contribute to the problem and send the share price even higher. This successful short squeeze of GameStop sparked a revolution against Wall Street. An armchair revolution, but a revolution nonetheless. Now, of course, at any time, tens, hundreds, or even thousands of companies are being shorted by big corporations and hedge funds, and so there were many opportunities for the apes of Wall Street bets to jump on in. Thus came the era of MOAS, or the mother of all squeezes. The apes' weapon, memes and meme stocks. The internet and media covered this event so much that it brought millions of new people into the movement. All of the fan favorite companies that were shorted and at risk of bankruptcy were now under the protective wings of Redditors of all people. This massive roller coaster of an event included so many short squeezes that even legacy media was covering Reddit for a month straight. Of course, we had our protagonist, GameStop, but along came AMC, the cinema chain that was also hammered by COVID and the lockdowns. We saw Bed Bath & Beyond join the fray, BlackBerry, and even AMX, a company chosen simply because it had a similar ticker to AMC. All these companies saw massive volatility in their share prices as retail investors flooded the markets with buy orders against all logic. The biggest shocker of all, though, comes with the persistence of the self-proclaimed apes. Not only has Reddit saved GameStop from a slow death, but Wall Street Bets investors have kept their money with GameStop for months on end, and they're showing no sign of stopping. GameStop's share price still stands at a pre-split level of $140 at the time of writing this video, far higher than it ever was before Wall Street Bets got their hands on it. But what did we get from all of these shenanigans? A video game retailer with new life thrust into it, a movie theater chain with far more fans than an insane man would have expected. Well, how about the slow, gradual, but very real collapse of one of the biggest hedge funds in the world? Remember Melvin Capital? Well, they're really not as big a deal today as they used to be, and that's thanks to Wall Street Bets. Melvin Capital ended up deciding that enough was enough, and can you really blame them? They held massive short positions in a number of different companies and suddenly found themselves underwater on almost everything they held. Melvin was one of the largest hedge funds that borrowed loads of GameStop shares. They then sold those shares and waited for the crash of GameStop. When the crash would inevitably come, Melvin would come in and buy back all the shares for a fraction of the cost and make themselves billions in the process. Or so was the plan before the apes came and changed everything. The support from the apes allowed GameStop to not only stave off bankruptcy, but also put in plans to thrive in the future. They're still holding their shares too, keeping the share price high and the short sellers underwater. This was Wall Street Bets' short squeeze, and you bet your bottom dollar they ran Melvin to the ground with it. Over the course of 2021, Melvin lost 39% of its value, and in the first 3 months of 2022, another 23%. This year alone, Melvin lost $3.2 billion. Their investors kept pulling their money out, and their time was ticking. And so, the founder and chief investment officer of Melvin decided to shut the whole thing down. Now, GameStop has been getting quieter and quieter ever since this whole saga started. Sure, their legacy will continue, but it seems that they have mostly hung up their boots for now. The whole fiasco does, though, show us all what the millennials and Gen Zs of the world can do. The market isn't just a place to invest and make money, but also a place to protest and have fun. The real kicker of this whole story is how this video only just scratches the surface, as it all goes so much deeper than you would believe. This really was a strange event, and it really was entertaining to watch too, just maybe not for Melvin Capital. This event, I would say, even humanized the market a bit. For so long, the stock market has only been characterized as this stuffy three-piece suit-wearing place where only the elite are welcome. And when the whole market is turned upside down in accordance with its own rules, you can only hope that things become more inviting. There's a fair bit of irony in seeing the rich lose money after remembering all the times they've done the rest of the world wrong. If you learn nothing else from this video, just remember that no good comes from annoying retail investors in the digital age. You might just turn out being the next Melvin Capital. And of course, this was probably the closest we will ever come to a random chimp event.